Newcastle United will be returning to Wembley after beating Arsenal 2-0 on the night, 4-0 on aggregate. Their knees have gone all trembly, which is actually one of the few injuries Callum Wilson has never had. He managed to get on the field, didn't he? Andy, that Arsenal team do let Newcastle get under their skin. They looked as rattly as the child gates I've installed in my home.
Yes, they did, and yes, they were. I think it's
and yes,
it's
my daughter is in danger. Correct.
Get her in that Arsenal back four at once /3. I think it's really interesting how they just hit the spot. They're like a little brother for Arsenal, aren't they?
Yeah.
They just irritate them in ways that others can't. As we were saying to each other beforehand, none of this could have happened without Jamal Lascelles, who obviously started all this without actually coming on the pitch back at the Emirates a couple of years ago.
He blocked a throw-in wearing not a gilet, what would you call it? A yellow tabard.
Yeah, like someone was visiting him in prison, basically. Yeah. And it's strange that it all started like that. But then, of course, since then you had the goal that didn't get disallowed, the winner last season at St James's Park.
Yeah.
You had the one where Arsenal went up there with a couple of games to go, hoping to make it to the Champions League in the Amazon Prime season, I believe they call it. And obviously Newcastle beat them that night, and that really was the start of Newcastle doing something, even though they didn't need to beat them that night. I think that probably sticks in the craw a little bit, that they surfed that wave of atmosphere and really enjoyed stopping them getting in the Champions League. It's all these little minor irritances, and Newcastle are quite a shithousey team anyway.
Yeah.
So I think all those things combine to make them sort of Arsenal's worst nightmare in many ways.
Yeah, and the way that Arsenal talk about Isak as if they're somehow already got him in their ranks, that's the only thing that can kind of irritate on the other side.
We're past that now, PT, because the thing is, they know they can't afford him at this point.
That's
because,
a very good point.
He's the best striker in the Premier League who's not Haaland. And
yes.
you could argue that he's got he has got a better all-round game, hasn't he? So I think that makes him, especially when you add to the fact that Newcastle can never sell him. If unless he's in a contract situation where he's got like 2 years left and he's not going to sign again, they can't sell him, because they would rather sell anyone for PSR purposes than him, and quite rightly so, because give them 150 million, give them 160 million, they cannot replace him. He is that good. And I think when we're talking about the all-round game, he showed it tonight. I mean, he didn't score, but he just led them a dance. And I tell you what, when Saliba plays that badly, it's so rare. It completely whacks me out of kilter, because you have to check if the sun's still coming up and going down and all that sort of stuff, because Saliba's relentlessly consistent. He's brilliant. And Isak absolutely took him to the cleaners tonight.
Well, I mean, like, Isak had the ball in the net, a fantastic finish after 5 minutes, like across the goalkeeper. And Arsenal centre-backs just looked, like we said, rattled by Isak and Gordon the whole game. Soon after, Isak beat Saliba to the ball, and he hit the post. Jacob Murphy converting very, very nicely.
Great
on
finish.
The rebound. It's a deceptively difficult finish, that one.
Yeah.
I think the story of this season, Andy, is it fair to say, is the unkillable Newcastle career of Jacob Murphy. He was signed the same week as Mikel, what the hell happened to him, Marino, and Miggy and him basically has been competing for the same position on the field ever since. But is it time to start taking him seriously? Last season he was the biggest chance creator from open play for Newcastle, just in front of Trippier, for players who had played over 1,200 minutes. Like, is it time to start taking him seriously? Is he just too bloody adorable?
Yes.
and filled with youthful exuberance, even though he's not that young anymore?
That's right. No, he has got a childlike wonder to him.
Yeah.
But I think we have to start putting some respect on his name, because I don't know, he was really a guy just to hold an end up, who would work hard, do his defensive doggies, all that sort of stuff, which is why they used him more and more. And now it's got to the point where they've been able to sell Almiron just because Murphy's been so good over the last year. He has been really good. And, this is, if we keep going back to it, but people always say that Newcastle got saved from relegation in the first year that Eddie Howe arrived in 21-22 because they spent all the money at Christmas. Okay, that didn't hurt, being able to bring in Guimaraes and Dan Burn and Chris Wood even for a bit, all those, Kieran Trippier, all those players. But Eddie Howe's coaching is unreal, because one of the big breaks on them getting up to the level that they want to get to is the fact that there was so much Ashley era ballast in the squad, unsellable players who no one really wanted. But some of those, I think you look at him, you look at Willock, you look at Longstaff, some others who, I suppose Fabian Schär to a certain extent, even though he was always a class player, he looked like he was never really going to get to that level, even though he had the talent. Eddie Howe's coaching is incredible, because really he's converted a load of players who didn't even look as if they were Premier League level into players who can be starters for a top 5, top 6 team.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about, literally about 2 seconds ago, you did, Andy, about keeping Newcastle up. I mean, Joe Willock was one of those footballers who kept Newcastle up with about 10, 11 goals in as many matches under Steve Bruce. And he's not probably had that much time, to shine thanks to a couple of injuries. But, I mean, you're right, though. It's these 7 out of 10 players that they are kind of harnessing purple patches that seem to be extending across whole seasons now. So you really have to sort of sit down and sort of go, he's always trying his best. He's always one of the most direct footballers on the field. And I just love seeing Jacob Murphy, who's not from Newcastle, but he supports Newcastle, and he has done since he was a child. And he wanted to come to the club. He wanted to work under Rafa Benitez, as we all would like to. I think it's fair to say we're all Rafa fans around here.
We are,
and it's just lovely to see that he's just having such a great time, and linking up with Newcastle's best player, Alexander Isak, all the time. He's like a little kind of partner to him.
It's amazing the click between them, and that's the most important thing, isn't it? Yeah. I think when we look at it and just how excited he is to be there, like. It's not just that he's great, and this almost stops people taking him seriously, as you say. Yeah. But the fact that he has got that sense of, oh my God, I'm doing this, I'm playing in these
singing
big matches,
the Champions League theme, just like
footballers don't have this, and it's a beautiful thing. But it means that it's hard for people to take him seriously, which is quite a sad reflection on how hard bitten and cynical we all are. Yeah. But he absolutely deserves his place. He's absolutely brilliant for them, and I think when you look at what Howe really wants, like players to cover every blade of grass, he really fits into that as well. Also as well, since he has become like properly like big Premier League player famous, it was really amusing when Oxford, got promoted in the League One Championship playoff last May, and my eldest son, who had no idea that he had a twin brother, was totally freaked out by Josh Murphy scoring those 2 goals.
What's happened?
It's like, what? A Premier League club's allowed to do that? Are they allowed to let lower division teams players for playoff
just for a laugh? Yeah.
I wish they were. They were.
Well, I mean, the story of the match it was kind of over as a contest when they scored their first, and you felt that there was another one coming from Newcastle. And Martin Odegaard had a few chances, got in some nice areas, but he didn't really offer much. And then second half, Arsenal just looked so nervy playing out from the back. Like Gordon should have scored when the goal was gaping, and he sort of whiffed it wide. And Fabian Schär pinches off Declan Rice. Gordon managed to put it away. It was a really shoddy performance from a rattled Arsenal side who had, not flat to deceive is not the term I want to use, but I think we spoke about it on the Ramble this morning. For a 5-1, it wasn't the most convincing 5-1 against Manchester City. A Manchester City side where it didn't matter whether you beat them or not. You're probably not going to win the league. You're in the position that you're in. You're probably safe for Champions League qualification next season, and you've got obviously options in Europe and not in the cups anymore, but in Europe. The Man City match was not important to Arsenal. This match was important to Arsenal, and they really did fluff their lives. They looked really, really rattled.
They did, but they looked more rattled as it went on. Whereas I would have thought that had worn off, the Newcastle irritant factor and the fact that they had to seize the occasion would have worn off as it went on. But it actually got worse because I know you said like after the opening goal and Newcastle are 3-0 up on aggregate, it's all written since then. I don't know if it was, because I kind of felt that it was not a massively comfortable 3-0 aggregate lead. Arsenal was still showing that they could create stuff, that they could maybe get back into the game.
Who's on the end of it though, Andy? It's young Kai, isn't it? Isn't it? Well, we've seen him screw him wide.
You might have a point. I mean, obviously City let him have so many goes that he did score eventually at the weekend. But I don't know. I think it was remarkable to me that the way that Arsenal came out for the second half. And I know Martinelli had to go off, but they've still got the players to make a difference. Nwaneri came on and he's been really, really good whenever he's played, and he's obviously going to be a huge player for them going forward. But the way they defended, it's as if they thought, oh, well, I suppose we're kind of still in it, but if we're definitely out of it, maybe we can spare our efforts and, just get on holiday ASAP, like you were saying. It was really, really eccentric play, and it's not like you don't know that Newcastle are going to chase and press you. So I don't really know if you can say it was Newcastle's pressing that caused those chances. I don't think it was. I mean, I don't think they did anything different to what they did before. But as you say, Arsenal at the start of that second half, so ponderous on the ball. Raya, Saliba, all of them, it was just a total mess. They gave Gordon that little sighter, and
when you're playing such a high line as well, you have to be on your toes. They just look really, really, really punch drunk almost. Yeah,
and then they used the end of the game to try and settle old scores. Like Declan Rice totally lost it.
Yeah, it was funny because when
that
was approaching a red for me, and and that would have set Twitter aflame, no doubt.
Well, I can't believe it wasn't a yellow. I mean, that was the thing that really got me, because I think it was probably quite comparable to the Bruno Guimaraes tackle on Trossard in the first half. You don't even need to be specific, to be honest. Just say the Bruno Guimaraes tackle. Because it's a weird thing where you sort of watching the game, and about halfway through, because Trippier's winding them up the whole way through as well, and you're thinking Arsenal are really losing their shit here, but funnily enough, Bruno is the player on the pitch most likely to get sent off, even though Newcastle have a degree of comfort. And he didn't calm himself down or anything like that. It's just Arsenal lost it more than him, particularly Declan Rice, because of course there's the bit just before he does the tackle on Bruno Guimaraes where he sort of clips Sandro Tonali, kind of body checks him as he's going past him, and you're thinking, maybe it was accidental, and then he does the tackle on Bruno Guimaraes, and no
further questions.
It's not accidental. No.
Yeah, and you had Joe Linton in the stands as well. That was the great thing. the one who was usually good for an amber card. It was a very, very strange match.